Welcome back to the Quarterly Call. All content discussed here is for informational purposes and is not investment advice. Please consult with a qualified professional before making any investment decisions.
Got it.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
We talk about these companies all the time, but it's not every day that one crosses a major threshold like this. We're diving deep into DoorDash's Q3 2024 earnings call. And, well, the headline's impossible to miss. DoorDash is officially profitable.
Yeah, it really is a turning point. What's remarkable is this is their first GAAP net income as a public company. We're talking $162 million in profit compared to, a loss the same time last year.
Wow.
For a company that many thought would struggle to make money, in the notoriously tough delivery business, this is huge.
It really is. It kind of shifts the whole conversation, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
I mean, for so long, people were skeptical, but DoorDash seems to have figured it out,
Yeah.
cracked the code. So how did they do it? What were the key factors that drove this profitability?
Well, it's not just one thing, right? It's not just one magic bullet.
Right.
It's a combination of, well, operational efficiency, for one. They've gotten really good at managing their delivery network and then new revenue streams like advertising.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they've become this powerful platform for local businesses to reach customers.
Okay.
And that advertising revenue, is adding up.
That's really interesting. It's almost like they're becoming like a media company as much as a delivery company at this point.
It is, yeah.
But with all this newfound profitability, I guess the big question is, what are they going to do with it? What will they do with it?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
Will they reinvest those profits to fuel further growth? Will they double down on their existing strategies or maybe even venture into new territory? Who knows?
Yeah.
It's hard to say. But, the next move, well, it could really reshape the entire local commerce landscape.
Absolutely. And speaking of growth, even all this talk about profitability, their growth engine is still humming along quite nicely.
Oh, yeah.
Total orders are up 18% year over year, hitting a whopping 643 million deliveries. That's a lot of food.
That's a lot of deliveries.
And Marketplace GOV, which is basically, like the total value of all those orders, also jumped by a healthy 19%, hitting $20 billion.
Wow, yeah.
So it's not just that they're getting more orders, they're also, the orders themselves are getting bigger.
It is, and it begs the question, is DoorDash just taking market share from competitors, or is the whole delivery pie actually getting bigger?
That's a really good question.
Yeah. If they're just stealing customers from other platforms, well, that growth, that might be limited.
Right.
But if the overall demand for delivery is expanding, then that's a whole different story.
Totally. Okay. So let's try to unpack that a bit. What does the data suggest? Is the market actually, organically growing? Or is it just a zero-sum game where DoorDash is winning at the expense of everybody else?
Well, from what I've seen, it seems like it's kind of both.
Okay.
DoorDash IS grabbing market share, but the overall demand for delivery, that IS growing as well.
Okay.
You see all these new customer segments and use cases emerging all the time.
Right. Right.
I mean, think about it. Just a few years ago, we mostly ordered pizza or Chinese food.
Right. Yep.
Now people are ordering everything. Everything from groceries to pet supplies, prescriptions. I mean, the possibilities really are almost endless.
I know. It's crazy. And I am totally guilty of that myself, especially the grocery delivery.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, and also speaking of international expansion, do you remember all those concerns about international expansion being a drag on profits?
Oh, yeah. Everyone was talking about that.
It looks like DoorDash totally defied those expectations.
Yeah, they did. It's actually pretty amazing. They're gaining market share in almost every international market they operate in.
Oh, wow.
And not only are they growing, but they're doing so at a pace that often outstrips their local competitors.
Wow.
But here's the kicker, okay? Their international segment is now gross profit positive.
Wow.
They turned what many people thought would be, a weakness into a strength.
That is truly amazing.
Yeah.
They must have had to adapt their strategy quite a bit to succeed in, such different markets, right?
Totally.
I mean, it's not easy to just take a business model and just, replicate it across different cultures and regulatory environments.
It's not. It speaks to their operational expertise, their ability to adapt to, local nuances.
Yeah.
It wasn't just luck. They studied each market carefully, identified the key differences.
Wow.
And then they tailored their approach accordingly.
It's a reminder that going global, it's not just about planting your flag in a new country, right?
Right.
You have to really understand the nuances of each market and be willing to adapt.
Absolutely.
But it's a strategy that's clearly working for them.
It is, yeah.
And speaking of, like, strategic wins, let's talk about grocery delivery.
Okay, yeah.
Do you think it's just a side hustle for DoorDash? Or are they really becoming, like, a serious player in that space?
Well, from what I've observed, grocery delivery is not just a side gig for them anymore.
Yeah.
They're seeing strong adoption,
Right.
and it's pushing up their average order values.
I've actually noticed that myself. I used to only ever order, like, takeout on DoorDash.
Yeah.
But now I find myself adding grocery items to my orders more and more often.
It's so easy.
It is so easy. It's almost like they, like, trained us to use it to become more reliant on the platform.
I think they did. You know, they started with those smaller, like, top-up needs, right? Like grabbing a few extra ingredients, a snack. But now they're targeting those larger, like, weekly shopping baskets.
Well-
They're going head-to-head with the big guys, you know, Instacart, Amazon.
Okay, so how is their approach to grocery different?
Right.
Are they just trying to, like, replicate what others are doing? Or do they have a unique angle?
That's a great question. And I think this is where DoorDash really has an edge. They're not just copying the competition.
Right.
They're leveraging their existing strengths. Their massive network of dashers, their incredibly sophisticated logistics platform, and, you know, their data-driven approach to personalization. They're taking what they've learned from delivering restaurant food and applying it to groceries.
It's really fascinating to see how they're taking those core competencies, you know, and kind of like blending them with new strategies to carve out a space in a different market.
Absolutely.
And, you know, their multi-basket strategy, which seamlessly integrates grocery into their broader platform. I think that could have big implications for the future of, like, retail in general.
I think so, too. They're creating a more holistic on-demand experience where consumers can get, you know, everything they need, from a quick snack to a week's worth of groceries, all through one app.
Right. And let's not forget about DashMart.
Oh, yeah, Dash.
Our own network of urban fulfillment centers.
Right.
Initially, a lot of people, like, scratched their heads wondering why DoorDash was getting into the business of running warehouses.
They did, yeah. It seems strange. But now we know that DashMart wasn't just about opening convenience stores, right?
Right.
It was about mastering the art of inventory management and delivery at scale.
So what's the big reveal? Like, what's the next chapter in the DashMart story?
Well, the big news is that DashMart is becoming a platform that other retailers can use.
Really?
Imagine it as fulfillment as a service for local businesses.
Wow.
Instead of needing their own warehouses and delivery infrastructure, they can tap into DoorDash's network.
It's huge. So they're basically creating a whole new business model within their existing platform. It makes you wonder if DashMart could become their secret weapon in these grocery wars, right?
It's definitely a possibility. By providing these other businesses with the tools and infrastructure they need to, you know, to succeed in this on-demand world, they're becoming more than just a delivery company. They're building a comprehensive ecosystem for local commerce.
It's a really bold move.
Yeah.
And it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out against the established players, like an Amazon, you know, who's already really entrenched in the fulfillment game.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see.
Okay. Let's move on to something that's been generating a lot of buzz lately, which is autonomous vehicles.
Okay.
DoorDash has been exploring their use for deliveries for years, and their recent comments suggest they're getting closer to, you know, making it a reality.
It's been in the works for a while now, you know. They've been working on it since 2017.
Oh, okay.
It's more nuanced than it seems, though, right? It's not just about robots delivering food. They're quick to point out that delivering goods presents unique challenges compared to, like, self-driving cars for passengers.
Right.
Like, a lot of people think it's the same thing, but it's not.
Right. Yeah, you can't just program a robot to drive around and drop off packages, right?
Right.
It needs to be able to navigate sidewalks, apartment buildings, handle unexpected obstacles, deal with weather conditions, you know, all sorts of things.
Imagine a robot trying to, like, leave a bag of groceries on your doorstep in the middle of a snowstorm.
Yeah, exactly.
There are so many variables.
And then there's the safety and security concerns, right?
Yep.
Like, how do you make sure that these robots aren't tampered with, aren't stolen? How do you guarantee that the deliveries are made to the right address and that the goods are protected? It's a big puzzle.
It is. It is a puzzle, but DoorDash's deep understanding of last mile logistics,
Right.
I think that could give them a significant edge.
Yeah.
They've spent years optimizing their delivery network, analyzing data, refining their processes. And, I think that expertise will be really valuable as this autonomous technology matures.
It's definitely a space to watch closely,
It is, yeah.
especially as companies like Amazon and Ford are also pouring resources into autonomous delivery. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about something that's a bit more grounded in the present, which is their new DoorDash commerce platform.
Okay.
What exactly is it at, and why should we care?
So this platform, it's really interesting. It's essentially their grand vision for empowering local businesses, not just through delivery, but by helping them become, fully digital.
Oh, okay.
They see this massive opportunity to bridge the gap between the physical and digital worlds.
So what does that actually mean, like in practice?
Yeah.
Like, what are the concrete features and tools that this platform actually offers?
Well, it goes way beyond just taking orders, right? They're providing tools for online ordering, phone orders, even tableside payments.
Wow.
It's about, giving these businesses all the tools they need to operate in a modern world.
So it's almost like Shopify, but for the physical world.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's like Shopify for the physical world. They're building the operating system for Main Street. Instead of having to piece together all these different solutions, businesses can have everything they need in one place.
And I guess by giving businesses this level of support, they're really positioning themselves as like more than just a delivery company, right?
They are.
They're becoming a vital partner in their success.
They're saying, hey, we're not just here to take a cut of your sales. We're here to help you grow.
It's a smart strategy,
It is.
and it could have a major impact on the competitive landscape, but with so many irons in the fire, profitability, growth, international expansion, grocery delivery, autonomous vehicles, and now this commerce platform, is DoorDash spreading itself too thin?
That's a valid concern. I mean, it's a lot to juggle, and it remains to be seen if they can, execute effectively on all these different fronts. But one thing's for sure, they're a company that thinks big, moves fast, and isn't afraid to disrupt things.
Absolutely, they are.
That makes them a fascinating case study,
It does.
regardless of what the future holds.
Absolutely. They're challenging our assumptions about what's possible in local commerce, and that makes them one of the most exciting companies to watch. But with all this talk about, the big picture, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on some of the less hyped but equally fascinating details that came out in the earnings call.
Like,
Their comments about the regulatory environment.
oh, yeah.
They
Fair.
mentioned that regulatory costs are continuing to decline, which, is a positive sign for their profitability.
Right.
It suggests that they're successfully navigating this complex, legal landscape
Yeah.
for regulations surrounding gig work and delivery platforms.
Absolutely. And that's crucial for their long-term success. As those regulations evolve, they'll need to show they can operate responsibly and sustainably. They can't afford to get bogged down in legal battles or, face backlash over labor practices.
Did you also catch their remarks about the increasing diversification of their business?
Yeah, definitely.
It seems like they're becoming less reliant on food delivery alone.
They are, yeah. They emphasized that their non-restaurant categories, like grocery and retail, are actually growing even faster than their core restaurant business. Like they're building this diversified portfolio of, interconnected businesses.
And, that makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
It reduces their vulnerability to fluctuations in any one market and creates more opportunities for cross-promotion and synergy.
It does, yeah. And this interconnectedness, I think, is one of their key strengths. They can leverage their existing infrastructure and, network effects to expand into new categories more efficiently.
And speaking of efficiency, they also highlighted the improvements they've made to their logistics platform.
Oh, yeah.
They've been able to reduce average delivery times and, improve the overall quality of their deliveries. And that might seem like a minor detail, but in this world of instant gratification, it's everything.
Absolutely. Speed and reliability are paramount.
Yeah.
Customers have high expectations, and if you don't meet those expectations, they'll go somewhere else.
It's a real testament to their focus on operational excellence, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
They're constantly tweaking and refining their processes to just deliver a better experience.
They are. And they're not stopping there either. They mentioned they're investing in new technologies and innovations to further improve their logistics network.
Oh, what kind of innovations?
Well, they didn't get into specifics, but they hinted at exploring things like machine learning to optimize delivery routes and, dynamic pricing to balance supply and demand.
Oh, wow.
They're sitting on, this mountain of data, and they're finding creative ways to use it to their advantage.
It's fascinating to think about all the possibilities. But with all this talk about, optimization and efficiency, it's easy to kind of forget about the human element, right?
Hmm.
What about their dashers?
Oh, absolutely. That's a great point. DoorDash has faced its fair share of criticism,
Yeah.
regarding their treatment of Dashers, concerns about pay, safety, and working conditions.
Yeah, the gig economy definitely has its downsides,
It does.
and it's important to acknowledge those.
Absolutely. And, to their credit, DoorDash has taken steps to address those concerns. They've introduced new safety features, increased pay transparency, and provided access to benefits like accident insurance and occupational accident coverage.
It's a reminder that building a successful business also means taking care of the people who are, making it all possible.
Absolutely. And as the gig economy evolves, DoorDash has an opportunity to be a leader in setting standards for fair labor practices.
Okay. Let's switch gears and talk about DoorDash's ambitions beyond delivery, because they seem to be thinking much bigger these days.
You mean their vision for this DoorDash commerce platform?
Yeah?
Yeah. It's bold, and it really could, transform their business model, expand their market dramatically.
Yeah. I mean, they're essentially saying they want to build an operating system for local businesses.
Right.
That's huge.
It is. They're betting that their deep understanding of local commerce and their existing relationships with, millions of consumers will give them a big advantage.
Yeah.
They're aiming to be the go-to platform for everything local, ordering food, booking appointments, finding services, all of it.
It's a gamble, for sure.
It is.
But it could pay off big time if they execute it well.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's talk about their international expansion, because that's been a major driver of their recent success, right?
It has been.
They've made inroads into markets like Canada, Australia, Japan, and their recent acquisition of Wolt has expanded their reach even further, into Europe and other parts of the world.
It has. That was a big move. It seems like they're not just dipping their toes in the water, they're diving right in.
Yeah, they are.
And, they're not just copying and pasting their U.S. model.
Right.
They're adapting to each market's unique culture, its regulations.
So what are some of the specific strategies they've used to succeed in these different markets?
Well, one key strategy has been to focus on building strong local teams.
Okay.
Teams that actually understand the nuances of their markets.
So they're not just sending American executives to run their international operations. They're actually empowering those local leaders who can, make decisions based on, what's happening on the ground.
Exactly. And they're also being mindful of, local customs, local preferences. They're not trying to force a one-size-fits-all approach.
So, for example, they might offer different types of cuisine or payment options in different markets depending on what's popular there.
Exactly. And, they're being really strategic about their partnerships as well. They're teaming up with local businesses, local influencers to build brand awareness and reach new customers.
It's a good reminder that going global, it's not just about, having a great product. It's about understanding the local context, tailoring your approach accordingly. And it's clearly working for them. Their international operations are becoming more and more profitable, contributing to their overall financial success. It's a sign that this global expansion is not just a growth strategy. It's actually a sound business decision that's creating value for the company.
It is, yeah. They're proving that their model can work on a global scale.
Okay. Let's dive into one of the most, I think, transformative aspects of DoorDash's business, which is their grocery delivery operation.
Okay, yeah.
It's a market that's been, rapidly growing. And DoorDash has emerged as a major player challenging these established giants like Instacart and Amazon.
It's been fascinating to watch them kind of enter the space and make such significant progress. They're not just a food delivery company anymore. They're a full-fledged grocery platform.
Right. And, they're not just mimicking their competitors either. They're bringing their own unique approach.
You're right. They're leveraging their existing network of Dashers and their sophisticated logistics platform to offer a fast, convenient experience. And they've been successful in attracting a lot of different grocery partners, from the
Hmm.
big chains to those local specialty stores,
Right.
offering consumers a lot of choices.
And crucially, they've like seamlessly integrated grocery delivery into their broader platform.
Right.
It's all about making it easy for customers to just order everything they need in one place.
It is. It's their multi-basket strategy in action.
Yeah.
And it's a key differentiator, I think. It taps into that, that growing consumer demand for convenience.
And, they're not resting on their laurels. They've been investing heavily in their grocery operations, building out their fulfillment
Because they
capabilities,
have. They are serious about it.
expanding their partnerships.
They are.
They've made significant progress in reducing delivery times and improving the quality of their grocery deliveries, which, again, like in this competitive market, is super crucial for customer satisfaction.
You're right. No, roasted lettuce. And they're also experimenting with new initiatives, offering personalized recommendations, curated selections of products.
Wow.
They're always thinking about ways to enhance that customer experience.
Yeah, it's a smart approach, and it seems to be working. Their grocery operations are becoming increasingly profitable.
They are, yeah. It's a sign that their strategy is working.
Okay, let's talk about something that's, I think, increasingly important to consumers these days and investors, which is sustainability.
Okay.
What are some of the steps that DoorDash is taking to reduce their environmental impact?
Well, they've implemented a number of initiatives aimed at minimizing their carbon footprint. Things like optimizing delivery routes to reduce mileage, promoting, the use of electric vehicles and bicycles, and partnering with sustainable packaging providers.
Those are all great initiatives, but are they just window dressing or are they making a real difference?
Well, I think it's a combination of both, to be honest. Any effort to reduce environmental impact, it's commendable. But it's important to remember that a company like DoorDash, with its reliance on vehicles and packaging, well, they will inevitably have a significant carbon footprint.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I think it's also important to acknowledge that they are trying to, mitigate their impact.
Right.
They're not ignoring
Yeah,
it.
no.
We're actively seeking solutions.
And I think that's what consumers are looking for these days. They
Right.
want to support companies that are taking sustainability seriously, even if they're not perfect.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly.
And I think DoorDash is making progress.
I agree. They're setting an example for the industry, Sustainability and profitability can go hand in hand.
Okay. So we've talked about their environmental impact, but what about their social impact? What are some of the initiatives that DoorDash is involved in to address social issues?
Well, they've implemented a number of initiatives aimed at tackling things like food insecurity, racial equity, economic empowerment. And, these efforts, they go beyond just writing checks to charities. They're integrated into their core business operations.
So they're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk.
Exactly. For example, they've partnered with food banks and community organizations to provide meals to people in need.
Right.
They've launched programs to support minority-owned businesses.
Those are great initiatives, and it sounds like they're really putting their resources behind them. But do you think these efforts are purely altruistic?
Right.
Or is there also a business case for social impact as well?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. DoorDash, they clearly care about these issues, right?
Yeah.
They want to make a positive difference.
Yeah.
But, it's also good for business.
Right. It helps them attract customers and employees who are drawn to those values.
Exactly. Consumers are increasingly, looking to support companies that align with their own values. And employees want to work for companies that are making a positive impact.
It's a win-win.
It is.
DoorDash gets to do good while also doing well.
Right. And they're not afraid to use their platform, to advocate for social change. They've spoken out on issues like racial justice and worker rights. They're willing to take a stand.
That's really refreshing to see. It's nice to see a company that's willing to, to put its values ahead of just pure profits, even if it means, risking some backlash.
It shows that they're not just driven by the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
They're guided by a sense of purpose.
Okay. Let's switch gears and talk about one of the things that has always kind of set DoorDash apart, I think, which is their relentless focus on innovation. They seem to be constantly experimenting with new technologies, new ideas,
Yeah, they're
seeking ways to improve their platform, expand their offerings, create value.
always pushing the boundaries. And And they're not afraid to take risks either, you know? They recognize that failure is often a necessary step on the path to innovation.
And, they've created this culture that encourages, creativity and experimentation,
It does.
empowering employees to, challenge assumptions and think outside the box.
Absolutely. It's not just about coming up with new ideas. It's about, having that freedom to bring those ideas to life.
And this culture of innovation has led to a steady stream of new products and features.
Mm.
I mean, think about their DashPass subscription service.
Oh, yeah.
DashMart, their fulfillment centers, their exploration of autonomous delivery.
Right.
They're not just iterating on existing ideas.
Right.
They're creating whole new categories.
They are. And they're not just focused on the technology itself either.
Right.
They're also thinking about that human element and, how they can use technology to create a better experience.
Okay. Let's talk about one specific area of innovation that I think is really interesting, which is artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Right.
How is DoorDash using these technologies to improve their platform and enhance the customer experience?
Well, they're using AI in a lot of different ways.
Okay.
From optimizing their logistics network to personalizing the customer experience to developing new products.
Okay. Can you give us some concrete examples? I mean, it's easy to throw around buzzwords like AI, but I'm curious to hear how it's actually being applied in practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, they're using AI to predict delivery times more accurately.
Okay.
That helps them set realistic expectations for customers
Right.
and, dispatch Dashers more efficiently.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to be told their food's going to arrive in 30 minutes and then end up waiting an hour.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And they're also using AI to route Dashers more efficiently.
Okay.
Taking into account things like traffic patterns, order volume, even weather conditions. Yeah, so they're constantly analyzing data and making those adjustments, in real time to make sure those deliveries are made as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
And they're even using AI to recommend dishes
They are, yeah.
that customers are likely to enjoy, based on their past orders.
Exactly. So it's like having, a personal food concierge.
That's pretty cool.
It is.
And those are just a few examples.
Right.
Right?
Those are just a few.
I mean, they're constantly exploring new ways to leverage this technology, and I think we're only just scratching the surface of what's possible here.
I agree. As AI evolves, I think it has the potential to revolutionize, everything. How we shop, how we eat, how we interact with our communities.
Absolutely. And DoorDash is, right there at the forefront of this revolution. They're not just using AI to improve their own business.
Yeah.
They're helping to shape the future of an entire industry.
That's right.
Okay. Let's talk about one of the most important stakeholders in DoorDash's ecosystem.
Which are the Dashers.
Yeah.
They're really the backbone of their delivery network, and, their well-being is really crucial to the company's success.
Absolutely.
Without Dashers, there's no DoorDash, right?
Right.
They're the ones who make it all possible, and it's so important for them to, to create a fair and supportive environment for those Dashers.
Absolutely. But they've also faced, some criticism in the past
Oh, yeah.
regarding their treatment of Dashers, concerns about pay, safety working conditions.
That's true. The gig economy definitely has its downsides.
It does.
And DoorDash has, been under scrutiny for some of their practices, but, they have taken steps to try to address those concerns.
Okay. Can you give us some examples of what they've done to improve the Dasher experience?
Sure. So they've introduced, some new safety features like the ability for Dashers to share their location with, trusted contacts.
Okay.
And to report any incidents easily. They've also increased pay transparency so that Dashers have, a clearer understanding of how their earnings are calculated. And they've provided access to benefits like accident insurance and occupational accident coverage.
Those are all positive steps. It
Yeah.
sounds like they are taking, the concerns of their Dashers seriously.
They are.
Yeah.
And, I think they're recognizing that treating Dashers well, it's not just, the right thing to do. It's also good for business
Right.
by creating a more positive and rewarding experience for Dashers. They can, attract and retain top talent, improve their service quality, and reduce turnover.
Yeah. It's a win-win situation
It is.
that benefits both DoorDash and their Dashers.
Yeah.
But, as the gig economy continues to evolve, they're going to need to keep finding ways to support and empower their workforce.
Absolutely. They need to be proactive, not reactive. They need to like anticipate the needs of their dashers and address them before they become big
And they
problems.
need to be transparent and accountable, right? Open about their policies, their practices,
Yeah.
and be willing to, listen to feedback and make changes.
Yeah, it's all about building trust
Yep.
and respect, where everyone feels valued.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about DoorDash's past and present, but let's switch gears and talk about their vision for the future. What's their grand plan?
Well, it seems like they're not content with just being, a delivery company.
Yeah.
They're talking about creating a whole new ecosystem, for local commerce.
Yeah, you're talking about their vision for the DoorDash commerce platform.
That's right.
It's a pretty bold idea, isn't it?
It is, yeah. They want to empower these local businesses, not just, through delivery, but by helping them become, fully digital. It's a big vision, but what does it actually look like? Like, what does that actually mean in practice?
Right.
Imagine a world where you can use DoorDash to do, like, everything from ordering takeout to booking a table at your favorite restaurant to, buying tickets for a local event
Wow.
to finding a plumber or a dog walker. I mean, that's the kind of ecosystem they're talking about.
So they want to be like the one-stop shop for all your local needs?
Exactly.
That's ambitious.
It is. It is ambitious, but they're betting that that their deep understanding of, local commerce and their existing relationships with millions of consumers, that's going to give them a big advantage.
Right.
They're essentially saying, we're not just a delivery company, we're the platform for everything local.
It's a fascinating concept, but I think it also raises some questions, right? Like, can they actually pull it off, and what does it mean, for the competitive landscape?
Those are good questions. I think it remains to be seen whether they can, successfully execute on this vision.
Yeah.
They're going to be facing stiff competition
Well-
from companies like Google, Yelp, even Amazon, who are all, vying for a piece of that local commerce pie.
And they'll need to convince businesses to, like, actually buy into their platform, right?
But it will.
I mean, it's one thing to partner with a restaurant for, for delivery.
Right.
It's another thing entirely to become their, all-in-one platform for everything.
It's a big ask, but, they've been successful at building those strong relationships with merchants in the past.
Yeah.
And I think they have a compelling case.
Hmm.
They can offer these businesses a wider reach, more efficient tools, access to data and insights.
It'll be interesting to watch how it plays out.
It will.
But let's shift gears again and talk about one of the most, I think, intriguing aspects of DoorDash's future, which is autonomous delivery.
Ah, yes, the robots are coming. It's a topic that's, been generating a lot of buzz, and for good reason. It has the potential to, like, totally revolutionize the delivery industry.
And DoorDash has been, like, quietly making progress in this area, I think, for years.
They have.
And their recent comments suggest that they're getting closer to, like, real-world deployments.
You're right. They've been testing their autonomous robots, in various locations, gathering data, refining their approach. And, it's not just about, the technology. They're also thinking about, that human element.
Right.
And how they can integrate autonomous delivery into, their existing network of dashers.
So it's not about replacing humans with robots.
Right.
It's about finding ways for them to, like, to work together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They see autonomous vehicles as a way to, to extend their reach, offer new services, and, operate more efficiently during those peak hours.
It's a vision that has the potential to, like, make delivery, faster, more affordable.
More accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
It could. But there are still, a lot of challenges to overcome. There are technological hurdles, regulatory hurdles, and even, ethical considerations to address.
Like what?
Well, for starters, the technology needs to be, super reliable,
Okay.
super safe. These robots need to be able to navigate complex environments. Right.
Avoid obstacles. Make those deliveries without incident.
Right.
And then there are those regulatory issues.
Right.
Different cities, different states, they have, different rules about autonomous vehicles. And DoorDash is going to have to navigate all of that carefully.
And then there are, the ethical considerations, right?
Of course.
Like, what happens to the jobs of human dashers? How do we ensure that these robots are used responsibly? That they don't create new problems, like increased traffic congestion, maybe even accidents?
You're right. Those are all important questions that, that we need to be thinking about as
Yeah.
this technology becomes more and more common.
Okay, let's zoom out for a minute and talk about some of the broader, like, implications of DoorDash's growth and influence.
Okay.
Because they're not just changing the way we order food, right? I mean, they're reshaping, like, the very fabric of our communities in a lot of ways.
They are. They've become a really significant part of,
Mm.
of the economic and social
Mm.
landscape.
In cities and towns, all across the country. And their influence is only going to grow, right? As they expand into new markets, new categories.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, they've created new economic opportunities for,
Yeah.
countless individuals,
Mm.
whether it's, dashers earning income through flexible work
Right.
or, small businesses reaching new customers online.
Yeah.
And their platform has, made it easier and more convenient for people to like just access a wide range of goods and services.
It has. But, there's also a downside, right? Some people argue that, that they're contributing to the decline of those traditional brick and mortar businesses.
Yeah.
And there are concerns about, the impact on traffic congestion, the environment.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers,
It is.
but it's definitely something that, that we need to be talking about
Absolutely.
as DoorDash continues to grow
We do.
and expand its reach.
We do. It's important to have that, balanced perspective.
Yeah.
And to consider both the positive and the negative aspects of their influence.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about something that's been a recurring theme, I think, throughout this whole deep dive, which is innovation. DoorDash seems to have like a real knack for finding new and creative ways to do things.
They do. They're constantly experimenting with new technologies, new business models, new ways to serve their customers.
And they're not afraid to take risks.
Not at all.
They're willing to try things that other companies might shy away from.
Yeah, and that's what sets them apart. They're not content with just, copying what everyone else is doing.
Right.
They want to be the ones pushing the boundaries, setting the trends.
Can you give us some like specific examples of how DoorDash is innovating?
Well, we've already talked about, their foray into autonomous delivery, their vision for this DoorDash commerce platform, right? But they're also experimenting with things like drone delivery, subscription services for everyday essentials, even partnerships with retailers to offer same-day delivery of, non-food items.
So they're constantly looking for like new ways to connect, businesses and consumers and just make that whole like the experience of local commerce more seamless, more efficient.
Exactly. They're not just focused on the technology, though. They're
Right.
thinking about, that human element
Yeah.
and how they can, create a better experience for everyone.
Okay, let's talk about their financials for a moment.
Okay.
They recently reported their first ever quarter of
Yes.
GAAP profitability.
Big news.
That's a big deal, right?
It is. It's a huge milestone for a company that's been known for its, rapid growth and heavy investments.
Yeah. So how did they do it? What were the key factors that drove that profitability?
Well, it's, a few things. They've been really disciplined about managing their expenses. They've seen strong growth in, some of their higher margin businesses,
Okay.
like advertising and subscriptions.
Right.
And they've benefited from economies of scale as they've, expanded.
But they're not just growing for the sake of growing. They're also focused on building a sustainable and profitable business.
Exactly. They've struck a good balance
Yeah.
between pursuing, ambitious growth goals and maintaining financial discipline.
And their strong financial performance, I mean, that's giving them the resources to invest even more aggressively
Absolutely.
in growth initiatives, right? Like
Yeah.
expanding into new markets, developing new technologies,
Exactly.
enhancing the customer experience.
It's a virtuous cycle.
It is.
The more they grow, the more profitable they become, the more they can invest in their future.
And that bodes well, for their long-term prospect.
It does. It does. But, we can't forget about the regulatory landscape, right?
Yeah.
The gig economy, it's facing increasing scrutiny from lawmakers and regulators.
Right.
And DoorDash is right there in the crosshairs.
So how were they responding to this regulatory pressure?
Well, they've been, pretty proactive in engaging with policymakers.
Okay.
And advocating for, regulations that strike a balance between protecting workers and fostering innovation.
So they're not just trying to fight regulations. They're trying to help shape them.
Exactly. They want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Yeah.
They've supported, legislation that provides gig workers with certain, benefits and protections while also preserving that flexibility and independence.
So they're trying to find that, like, middle ground.
They are.
A way to create a system that works for both, workers and the platforms.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act.
It is.
But it's essential if they want to ensure that their business model is viable in the long run.
Okay. Let's shift gears and talk about DoorDash's commitment to social impact.
Okay.
They've been involved in a number of initiatives aimed at addressing issues like food insecurity, racial equity.
They've partnered with food banks and community organizations to, provide meals to those in need. They've launched programs to support those minority-owned businesses. And they've spoken out on issues like racial justice and worker rights.
So they're not just focused on their bottom line.
Right.
They're also trying to make a positive difference.
They are. And I think that's something that, that consumers appreciate, employees appreciate. People want to support companies that, align with their values.
Yeah, it's a smart strategy.
It is.
It's good for business.
It is.
It's good for the community.
Absolutely.
And it's good for the world.
It's a win-win-win.
It is. Okay, so we've talked about DoorDash's current operations, their plans for the future, but let's zoom out for a moment and talk about some of the broader trends that are shaping the on-demand delivery and local commerce space.
Yeah, well, I think one major trend is, the increasing demand for convenience. Consumers are, busier than ever, and they're just looking for ways to simplify their lives. They want everything, at their fingertips, and they want it now.
And that's where DoorDash comes in, right?
Right, exactly.
I mean, they're perfectly positioned to capitalize on that trend.
Yeah.
Providing, that fast and convenient way for people to get what they need when they need it.
And another, big trend is the rise of mobile technology. Smartphones they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And people are using them for everything, from shopping to banking to entertainment. DoorDash has been, at the forefront of this whole mobile revolution, developing a, user-friendly app that makes it, so easy for people to order food, track those deliveries, manage their accounts.
And they're constantly innovating, right? Adding new features, new functionality to make that app even more convenient and engaging.
Absolutely. They're not just, sitting back and letting the world change around them. They're shaping the future of mobile commerce.
And they're doing it, on a global scale.
They are. They've expanded into, markets all over the world, bringing their unique brand of convenience and innovation to new audiences.
And, they're not afraid to, take risks.
Not at all.
And push the boundaries of, of what's possible.
That's right.
Okay, let's talk about one of the most important factors in DoorDash's success, I think, which is their ability to attract and retain top talent.
They've built this reputation as a great place to work with a culture that values innovation, collaboration, impact, and they've been really successful in recruiting some of the brightest minds in tech, from engineers and data scientists to product managers and marketers.
So what's their secret? What makes them such an attractive employer?
Well, for starters, they offer competitive salaries, good benefits.
Okay.
But it's more than that, right? It's more than just money. They've created a work environment that's both challenging and rewarding.
Right.
Where, where employees have the opportunity to make a real difference.
So they're not just offering a job, they're offering a chance to, to be part of something meaningful.
Exactly. And they've invested heavily in employee development, providing those opportunities for growth and advancement.
So it's a place where people can learn and grow.
It is.
And build their careers.
Absolutely. That's something that, that really appeals to top talent.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of positive things about DoorDash, but let's be realistic for a moment. No company is perfect.
Of course not.
What are some of the challenges and risks that they face?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is competition.
Yeah.
This on-demand delivery and local commerce space, it's so competitive.
It is.
There are so many well-funded players all vying for market share.
Yeah, it's a crowded field.
It is.
And those barriers to entry are relatively low.
Absolutely.
So they need to be constantly, innovating, finding ways to set themselves apart.
That's right. They can't get complacent.
And they're also facing increasing scrutiny, I think, from regulators.
Yeah, they are.
Who are concerned about Worker classification, labor rights, the impact of gig work.
That's a major issue for them.
It is.
And it's something they need to, address carefully. They need to show that they're committed to creating a fair and sustainable gig economy.
Right. And, let's not forget about the macroeconomic environment, right? I mean, we're living in like uncertain times with rising inflation, supply chain disruptions,
Right.
geopolitical instability.
It's true. Those are all factors that could impact their business, and they're going to need to, to adapt.
But despite these challenges, I think DoorDash is still in a really strong position.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They have a proven track record. I mean, of innovation, execution, customer focus.
They've overcome a lot of obstacles in the past.
They have.
And I think, they're well equipped
Yeah.
to handle whatever comes their way.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about one of the most exciting aspects of DoorDash's business, I think, which is their data-driven approach to, decision-making.
Oh, yeah. They're sitting on this mountain of data.
They are.
And, they're using it to power their algorithms, optimize their operations, make smarter business decisions. It is, they're not just collecting data, they're actually using it to gain insights.
Right.
To create a better experience for their customers, for their dashers, for their merchants.
Can you give us some specific examples of how they're using data to drive their business?
Sure. So they're using data to personalize that customer experience, predict demand, optimize those delivery routes, identify new markets to expand into, and even develop new products and services.
Wow. So they're really using data to inform every aspect of their business, from the big picture strategic decisions to the day-to-day operational details.
Exactly. And they're constantly experimenting with new ways to use data, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It's a good reminder that in today's digital age, data is a powerful asset.
It is. And the companies that are able to to harness it effectively, well, they're going to have a big advantage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about something that's been generating a lot of buzz lately, which is the metaverse.
The metaverse.
DoorDash has been, experimenting with ways to create these immersive and engaging experiences for their customers.
Yeah.
In these virtual worlds.
It's a fascinating area, isn't it?
It is.
It's still, very early days.
Yeah.
But I think the metaverse has the potential to, to transform the way we interact with brands.
Right.
The way we interact with each other.
Yeah.
It's going to change things.
And DoorDash wants to be at the forefront of this transformation.
They do. They've been experimenting with things like virtual restaurants and stores.
Okay.
Where customers can, browse those menus and interact with products and, in a 3D environment.
It's like bringing the real world into the virtual world.
Exactly. And they've even partnered with brands to, create those interactive experiences like, virtual concerts, sporting events.
So it's not just about shopping and dining. It's about creating this whole new way to experience the world around us.
Yeah. And it's, it's early days, but I think DoorDash is, onto something big here.
Okay. Let's shift gears and talk about something that's incredibly important in today's business environment, I think, which is trust.
Yeah.
DoorDash has made it a real priority to build trust with their customers, their dashers, their merchants.
You're right. I mean, trust is so essential for any successful business, and DoorDash has been very deliberate about, earning that trust, maintaining it.
So how have they done that? What are some of the specific things they've done to build that trust?
Well, for starters, they've been very transparent in their communication, They're very open about their policies and their practices, and they're quick to address any concerns, any issues that arise. They've also been, very fair and ethical in their dealings with their partners.
So they're not just talking about trust, they're actually demonstrating it through their actions.
Exactly. And I think that's what really makes a difference. People can tell when a company is genuine and when it's just paying lip service.
Yeah.
And DoorDash's, focus on trust, well, it's paid off. They've built a loyal customer base. They've attracted and retained top talent. They've fostered strong relationships with their merchant partners.
It's a reminder that in today's world, trust is a really valuable asset.
Absolutely. They have. And I think that's what makes a difference, People can tell when a company is genuine and when it's just paying lip service.
Yeah.
And DoorDash's focus on trust has paid off. They've built a loyal customer base, attracted and retained top talent, and fostered strong relationships with their merchant partners.
It's a reminder that in today's world, trust is a really valuable asset.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about one of the most important aspects of DoorDash's culture, their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI.
Right, right. They've made DEI a priority, and they've been very vocal about their commitment to creating a more inclusive and equitable workplace.
But it's more than just words, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the concrete steps they've taken to promote DEI within their organization?
Well, they've diversified their hiring pipeline, created employee resource groups, provided unconscious bias training, and they've set ambitious goals for increasing representation of underrepresented groups at all levels of the organization.
So they're taking a holistic approach, addressing both the internal and external aspects of DEI.
Exactly. They're not just focused on hiring a diverse workforce. They're also creating a culture where everyone feels welcomed, respected, and valued.
And they're holding themselves accountable. They're tracking their progress and reporting on their results.
You're right. They're not afraid to be transparent about their challenges and to share their successes.
It's a reminder that DEI is an ongoing journey, not a destination.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
is. And it's a journey that DoorDash is committed to taking.
Okay, let's talk about DoorDash's approach to corporate social responsibility, CSR.
You mean their commitment to giving back to their communities and to making a positive impact on the world?
Exactly. What are some of the specific CSR initiatives that DoorDash is involved in?
Well, they've focused on areas where they can make, a real difference, like addressing food insecurity, supporting small businesses, and promoting sustainability.
Can you give us some concrete examples?
Sure. They've partnered with food banks to deliver meals to those in need. They've launched programs to help minority-owned businesses grow, and they've invested in renewable energy to power their operations.
Those are all really great initiatives. It sounds like they're not just, writing checks. They're actually, actively engaged in their communities.
You're right, and they're not doing it for the publicity. They're doing it because they believe it's the right thing to do.
It's a reminder that businesses have a responsibility to give back, to make a positive impact.
It is, and DoorDash is a great example of a company that's doing just that.
Absolutely. Well, it's been amazing to see how much DoorDash has accomplished in such a short amount of time. I mean, from a small startup delivering food in a few cities, they've become this, global force reshaping the entire landscape of local commerce.
It really is incredible, yeah. What strikes me is just their drive to innovate. They're constantly pushing the boundaries, exploring new technologies, expanding into new markets.
And it's almost like they have this, insatiable appetite for growth and disruption.
They do, and they're doing it, so strategically. They have a clear vision, and they're executing on it really well.
I'm particularly fascinated by their vision for the DoorDash commerce platform. It's like they're building the operating system for Main Street,
Yeah.
empowering these local businesses to really compete in the digital age.
It really is a bold move, and it has the potential to change the game completely. Imagine a world where you can, order anything from any local business with just, a few taps on your phone.
A world of ultimate convenience and choice. And, all powered by DoorDash's technology and logistics.
Absolutely, yeah. And they're not stopping there. Their explorations into autonomous delivery, ghost kitchens, the metaverse, they're pushing the boundaries even further. It's almost like they're writing, the next chapter of commerce.
It's definitely an exciting time to be following their journey. But with all this innovation and ambition, it also begs the question, can they sustain this momentum?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? They're facing, a number of challenges. Fierce competition, regulatory scrutiny, those ever-evolving needs of consumers.
But, what gives me confidence is their track record. I mean, they've faced challenges before, and they always come out stronger. They're adaptable, they're innovative, they're, laser focused on their customers.
I think you're right. They've built a really solid foundation, and they definitely have the talent and the resources to continue to thrive. They've also shown that they're willing to learn and adapt, and that's crucial in this rapidly changing environment.
Absolutely. Ultimately, I think their success will depend on their ability to execute their vision, to navigate those complexities of the market and to just stay ahead of the curve.
But if anyone can do it, I think DoorDash can. They've proven, time and time again that they're not afraid to challenge the status quo and to push those boundaries.
So where do you think DoorDash will be in 5 years?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think they have the potential to become, one of the most dominant forces in local commerce. Imagine a world where DoorDash is like the go-to platform for everything, from ordering groceries to booking appointments to finding local services. They could become the operating system for our daily lives, connecting us to those businesses and services that we need in this seamless, personalized way.
It's a bold vision, but I think it's definitely within their reach if they continue to execute effectively. They already disrupted the food delivery industry, and now they're sitting their sights on, a much bigger prize. It's going to be an exciting ride.
One thing's for sure. DoorDash is a company worth watching. Their story is far from over, and the next chapter, well, I think it's going to be even more transformative than the last.
I don't know about you, but I am definitely hungry for what's next. This deep dive has given me a whole new appreciation for DoorDash's, ambition, their potential to just reshape, the world around us. They're a company that's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see what they do next.
Me too. Their journey is a testament to the power of, innovation, execution, and customer focus. They're a company that's built to last, and I think they're just getting started.
Thank you so much for listening to the Quarterly Call. If you enjoyed it, make sure to rate and follow our show. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.